The Battle of Sullivan's Island, fought on June 28, 1776, off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina, was a pivotal early battle in the American Revolutionary War. It was a resounding patriot victory that not only saved Charleston from British occupation, but also demonstrated the American colony's capacity to withstand British military power. The battle was the British's first major amphibious assault on the southern colonies, exposing flaws in British assumptions about the strength of Loyalist support and the vulnerability of Southern Patriot forces. It also demonstrated Charleston's strategic importance and contributed to American control of the South over the next several years. In early 1776, the British government shifted its focus to the southern colonies, believing that there was strong support for the Loyalists there. The plan was to launch a military campaign to restore royal authority in the Carolinas and Georgia, laying the groundwork for regaining control of other rebellious colonies. The campaign's primary target was Charleston, the South's wealthiest and most populous city. General Sir Henry Clinton, a senior British commander in North America, was assigned to lead the expedition. He was to collaborate with Commodore Sir Peter Parker, who led a naval squadron. Their goal was to land troops near Charleston, crush Patriot resistance, and re-establish British rule in South Carolina. Governor Lord William Campbell, a staunch Loyalist who had been forced to flee Charleston the year before, backed the plan and predicted that Loyalist militias would rise to support the British. In preparation for the impending British attack, South Carolina's revolutionary government began building a fort on Sullivan's Island, a narrow barrier island at the mouth of Charleston Harbor. This fort, later known as Fort Moultrie, was constructed to prevent enemy ships from entering the harbor and attacking the city directly. Colonel William Moultrie, commander of the 2nd Regiment of the South Carolina Militia, oversaw the fort's construction. The fort was primarily constructed of palmetto logs, a soft, fibrous wood that proved helpful in absorbing and deflecting British cannon fire during the battle. In mid-June 1776, British forces began to arrive off the coast of Charleston. General Clinton had landed troops on nearby Long Island, modern-day Isle of Palms, intending to attack the fort from behind by wading across the shallow channel known as Breach Inlet. Meanwhile, Commodore Parker's fleet of 9 warships positioned itself to bombard the fort from sea. Clinton's force included around 2,200 British and Hessian troops, while Parker commanded ships armed with over 270 cannons. They were opposed by approximately 435 American defenders at Fort Sullivan, led by Colonel Moultrie. Despite the small number of troops and the fort's incomplete state, Moultrie and his men were determined to hold their position. Among them were several companies of South Carolina and Continental Army troops, as well as local militia. The defenders had approximately 31 cannons to counter the superior British firepower. On the morning of June 28, 1776, British warships under Commodore Parker opened fire on the fort. For hours, the Royal Navy bombarded Sullivan's Island with cannonballs, bombs, and grape shot. To the British's surprise, the fort's palmetto log walls absorbed the cannon fire, preventing significant damage. Instead of splintering or causing lethal ricochets, the cannonballs bounced off or became embedded in the spongy logs. The sand-filled walls also absorbed the force of the explosions. Moultrie's defenders returned fire with precision and discipline. Though fewer in number, the American cannons caused significant damage to the British ships, particularly Parker's flagship, the HMS Bristol, which suffered heavy casualties and structural damage. Several British ships also became stuck on the sandbars surrounding the harbor, complicating their maneuvers and making them easy targets for American gunners. Meanwhile, General Clinton attempted to coordinate a land-based attack by moving troops across Breach Inlet from Long Island to the eastern end of Sullivan's Island. He expected the water to be shallow enough for a wading attack, but this proved to be a significant mistake. The channel was deeper and more treacherous than British intelligence had predicted. Under American fire, the British soldiers were unable to cross the inlet, despite wearing heavy uniforms and carrying heavy equipment. American troops stationed on the opposite side of the inlet, led by Colonel William Thompson and his 3rd South Carolina Regiment, opened fire on the vulnerable British forces, inflicting casualties and preventing any crossing. Clinton was forced to abandon the land assault, leaving the naval fleet to deal with the brunt of the attack alone. As the battle raged throughout the day, the American resistance stood firm. Despite the intense maritime bombardment, only a few Patriot casualties were recorded. One of the most dramatic scenes of the battle was when the fort's flag was shot down. Under fire, Sergeant William Jasper leaped over the parapet, retrieving the flag and reattaching it to a makeshift staff to keep the Patriot banner flying. His bravery became legendary, and it is widely celebrated in American folklore. By late afternoon, the British warships had sustained severe damage. The HMS Bristol alone had over 100 casualties, and its rigging and masts were in shambles. The HMS Experiment, another major ship in Parker's fleet, was also severely damaged. Commodore Parker was injured when a splinter tore through his leg. With mounting casualties and little effect on the fort's defenses, Parker was forced to abandon the assault and withdraw his ships. General Clinton's land forces also retreated, unable to complete their mission. The battle was a total failure for the British. They had anticipated a quick and decisive victory, one that would restore royal authority and spark loyalist uprisings throughout the South. Instead, they suffered a humiliating defeat that exposed flaws in their strategy, intelligence, and coordination. The loss also pushed back further British efforts to retake the South by several years. Charleston remained in American hands until 1780, and the southern colonies were under Patriot control during the critical early years of the war. Their victory at Sullivan's Island boosted the Americans' morale. It arrived just days before the adoption of the Declaration of Independence, representing the colony's ability to withstand the might of the British Empire. Colonel Moultrie and his men's bravery were widely publicized, and Moultrie himself rose to prominence as a military icon. In honor of their bravery, the fort was renamed Fort Moultrie, and South Carolina adopted a new flag featuring a palmetto tree, which had protected them during the battle. This image is still a prominent feature of the South Carolina state flag to this day. The contributions of key American leaders were critical to securing victory. Colonel William Moultrie demonstrated exceptional leadership and tactical acumen throughout the battle. Despite criticism for using unconventional materials, his decision to build the fort out of palmetto logs ultimately saved his command. He kept order and morale under fire, directing cannon fire with precision and refusing to leave his post despite being outgunned and outnumbered. Colonel William Thompson also played a critical role in keeping General Clinton's troops from crossing Breach Inlet. His defense of the island's rear kept the British from launching a pincer movement that would have overwhelmed the fort. Despite being outnumbered, Thompson's men took advantage of the terrain and delivered accurate musket fire, thwarting the British land assault. The British defeat was mainly due to poor coordination and intelligence. General Clinton and Commodore Parker did not conduct a thorough reconnaissance of Breach Inlet, and their assumption that the water was shallow proved disastrous. Clinton's plan to land troops behind the fort was sound in theory, but natural obstacles and stiff Patriot resistance hampered its implementation. Commodore Parker's naval assault also exposed serious flaws. His fleet was unable to successfully navigate the sandbars and shallow channels that surrounded Charleston Harbor. The ships became easy targets for American artillery, and the palmetto log construction of the fort rendered much of the Royal Navy's firepower ineffective. Parker's decision to continue the bombardment despite mounting damage exemplified the overconfidence that many British commanders displayed in the early stages of the conflict. The battle had far-reaching historical consequences. It secured the southern flank of the American rebellion, allowing the colonies to focus their efforts on defending northern territories. The delay in the British conquest of the South gave the Continental Congress time to strengthen its military and political infrastructure. It also increased recruitment and support for the Patriot cause, especially in the southern colonies, where many residents were unsure which side to support. The British, stung by their defeat, reconsidered their strategy in the South. They would not return in force until 1780, when General Clinton defeated Charleston in a massive siege. However, by then, the strategic landscape had shifted dramatically. American forces had gained experience, while British resources were stretched thin from fighting in multiple theaters of war, including the Caribbean and Europe. The eventual British return to the South would be met by a more organized and resilient Patriot resistance, built on victories and morale established at battles like Sullivan's Island. The Battle of Sullivan's Island has left an indelible mark as a symbol of resilience and strategic ingenuity. The use of unconventional materials, the valiant stand of outnumbered defenders, and the local militia's ability to repel a professional British force all contributed to its legendary status. South Carolina continues to regard the battle as a watershed moment in its state history. The fort has been preserved as part of the Fort Sumter and Fort Moultrie National Historical Park, and it continues to serve as a memorial and educational center.